Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As the discussion today will focus on the most important topics we covered here in 2022 over our webinars. And we've done so many. We went through hours of video material and picked the absolute cherries of what anyone in the event industry should take with them walking into 2023. But before we start, let me just quickly let you know that on your right-hand side, you have a screen with chat window and reactions with emojis. We'd love to see your comments, to see how you react. So feel free to make the great use of it. And at the very end, I would like to share some news about the gift card opportunities. So please stay tuned and stay to the end. So without further ado, let me introduce my co-hosts, Six Connect CMO, Luis Martins. Hello, Luis. Great to have you here. And let's see what has happened in 2022 and what it means for 2023.
True, Barbara. Thank you so much for doing this. And thank for the entire team of marketing at Six Connects. We've produced an enormous amount of content. Blogs alone, we had 112 blogs. We ran 13 webinars. We invited some very, very cool people who shared their thoughts, their opinions, their predictions for the future. And the marketing team just took the time to review all of those reels and come up with what they thought was the most important and more relevant clips. So the idea, and both Barbara and I, what we'll do today is kind of be your guide in contextualizing those clips. Hopefully you take a lot from this. These people that are talking really understand about the business. So with no further ado, let's go to our first one. I'll let you introduce it, Barbara.
Thank you. So we talked back in the first half of 2022 over a webinar with Maciej Ryś from ProIdea, who's a VP there. ProIdea is an event agency specializing in technology events. And back then, we talked about the comeback of in-person events, how it actually felt to do in-person events after such a break because of COVID, and what changed, what it means, what new trends or which new requirements are now connected to in-person events.
Let's call it 5 things you need to take care of. First of them is always contracts. So make sure that every single contract with participants, with hotels, with anything you have, they have a possibility of, they have flexibility. That's it. You could either cancel, you could move it, you could change it. That's really key thing, because you don't want to spend half of your money and then never recoup it, because that's how it should work. The second thing, you have to be prepared to go online or hybrid. You need to have a staff possibility. Sometimes, like if you go with in-person event, but you are uncertain whether, like again, going to the point one, so contracts, you need to be prepared for everything. So if something happens with COVID, for example, COVID comes back, you just do this and you go online. And you have to be prepared for that. So number 2. Number 3 is that, as Kara was saying, costs are going up. So you shouldn't go with razor thin margins, because you're gonna lose money. Unfortunately, you shouldn't like charge people twice the money you did before, but you shouldn't be afraid to actually giving them better experience for slightly higher margins, because like people expect higher. As again, Kara was mentioning, people expect higher things, more exclusive food, cleaner places, etc., etc. It does require costs, and you shouldn't be afraid of them. But you shouldn't go with razor thin margins. So that's number 3. But again, you shouldn't raise them too high, because then people would just crash you. People like you don't want to like squeeze people because of the uncertainty that happens. The 4th thing is that you need to be really clear on the content, as Kara said again, but also on the things that happen during the event. So you need to have a clear message for people. So for example, guys, you need to be here and there. We're gonna have this and that. Then we have lunch that happens here and that. You need to be somehow, in Poland, we have this saying that we have to do it as you, when you dig a hole, it's really simple. So you need to give people instructions on how to dig a hole. Like you need to give them really clear and simple instructions, because people haven't been on events for 2 years. They forgot some things, as simple things as checking into the hotel. I'm not trying to say that someone is they got lazy or something, because that's not my thing. But what I want to point out is that people want to have a clear message. They want to know where to go, how to be there. They need to know everything, because they want to switch off their thinking. They want to focus on the content. They don't want to focus on how to get to the hotel. They want to we have a GPS. They all need to do is click it, but they need to know where to go, etc. And the fifth thing, which is again a big thing, I think it might be the biggest thing, is that people want to go back into in-person events. They want to meet. They want to see their faces. And if someone says that they don't, they probably haven't done the market research. People, of course, not all of the people want that, but that's fine. Not everyone wants to have a connection, etc. But participation even during every single report and market research or scientific research or academic research says that networking and participation and face-to-face contact does have a lot of positive outcomes, not only when it comes to events, but also when it comes to the personal development, when it comes to depression treatment, etc., and things like that. So make sure that this component will always be really, really important during every single event, whether it's a small meeting, whether it's a big, massive conference, it's a 3-day blowout, or whatever it is. Make sure that you focus on it.
Yeah, those were very, very good points. Most people had forgotten about what it's like to put together an in-person events after 2 years. So there are some great reminders in there and some smart ways of thinking about contracting and all of that. What we have seen happen is that this new term, hybrid events, was kind of created in the last 2-3 years. We at 6Connects have been where you have physical components and in-person virtual components combined, meaning the hybrid experience. We have someone here at 6Connects, Carapol, who is an industry veteran. She's been doing this for a very, very long time. And she did a webinar not too long ago, and she talked about two things that I think are extremely relevant. One is when you add virtual components and into an in-person event, what is it that you need to think about and how they should interact with each other? So we have two clips that show her remarks on these two very, very important components of events. I'll let Kara talk about them now.
I'm also seeing a really big shift in the camp of there is a really huge component to a hybrid event. We cannot forget the reach that virtual events can bring to our audience. And so they're seeing that value of, okay, maybe I have a subset of attendees that I'm going to bring in person, and they're going to have this really immersive in-person experience with this really great networking. And then I'm going to have a virtual component to it, but it's going to be less heavy than what we saw in COVID. And that, I think, is a really key trend that I see evolving in the industry of just how do we tastefully have both the physical experience and the virtual experience coming together. And I think it's really important. You have to focus on your attendees. So I'm seeing the expectation from attendees that they really need a reason to come to your event, right? Like they know if there's a virtual component, they're just going to come to your sessions online. So what are we doing with our in-person events that really make it stand out and really make it worthwhile for that attendee to drop their responsibilities and travel to your event? And I say, hybrid is this concept, but it's not new. People have been doing this before COVID, but I think that COVID has rightfully brought technology to the forefront of the conversation and helps us evolve in the event space. It's so mixed right now. I mean, I can tell you, I did have a client that did a product launch and it was hybrid, and they wanted to keep the in-person experience exclusive. So they invited their top 100 prospects to this really immersive in-person experience and wowed them. And then the rest of the people, of course, they did their marketing pushes and they wanted people to watch the webinar and all that. So that part was virtual and it worked really well for them. So I think it's just realizing that your hybrid, there's hybrid, but your physical and your virtual don't have to be the same, and that's okay. And it's just finding that balance.
These were great points. I completely agree with Kara. But what this really speaks to is the strategy behind your events throughout the year and your goals for each one of them. And this brings us to our next pick from our highlights from 2022, which is the strategy. And again, Kara, she went on to describe the specifics about event attendance and expectations, which I absolutely love. So let's see this.
I think it's more defining what your attendees are expecting. So if your attendees are expecting that really immersive networking, or maybe there's special events that you're hosting with your event, that makes sense in person. And maybe you don't need that virtual component, and that can be in person. But if you're trying to reach maybe a learning and development type audience where they need to do training and they just need to sit in sessions, there's some virtual components there that can be really powerful and expand your reach as an organization. So I think it really comes down to your goals of your attendee and your event, and then kind of defining from there. And I think when I was part of the group of people learning virtual immersive experiences for the first time in COVID with trying to replicate a physical event. And I had 4 weeks to flip it around and figure out how to use this platform I've never used and how do I do all these things. And what I learned was sometimes bigger is not always better. So I'm seeing more like the simplified virtual experience where maybe it's just your keynote, or maybe it's just your 3-hour general sessions. And then your on-site experience where you're trying to get those people is more of the breakouts and the small groups and the roundtables. So really, I think there's key in defining each experience for each attendee, each avenue attendees could be coming to your event, and not look at them the same.
I really like this topic, and the ability that we have now to plan and strategize in our event strategy is way higher than it was before. We have all these new tools, we have all this cool technology that allows you to think about, my objective here is A, B, and C. This is how I'm going to achieve that. And you can combine bits of hybrid events, bits of virtual events, bits of in-person events, and just combine any way, shape, or form it makes sense for you to achieve your goals. I think Adam Rosen from USC had some very, very good points about how hybrid events fit into the overall strategy of USC. Let's see it now.
Show them that experience and make them feel it, whether they're at home or online. And each engagement or each way that we looked to bring those graduates in was really key to how we set that up. And you mentioned it was pictorial. I mean, when you're working at when you're working with something hybrid, when you're working with something online, you really only have those visual mediums, right? In that way, yes, there's music, and we could play the the march of the dun 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 dun. But the reality is that doesn't take you into it as much as seeing it and feeling part of that. The flip side is we didn't want them to look at this and go, "Oh man, that's what I missed," right? I didn't get that. So we had to walk that line of creating kind of that engagement piece, but also showing them what it was like. So I think, what we did is envelop everybody within that. So you mentioned earlier that we did satellite ceremonies. Each school had its own location, and that's what they broadcast from. So those who were watching remotely for our main ceremony, they were in the Coliseum. They clicked in, and this is what they saw. So we took iconic pictures, we overlaid some screens and some banners if the school didn't have kind of iconic labeling of what their building was, and then we put in these virtual chairs to create those environments. And when it was time for their ceremony, they clicked on that and they made that work.
Oh, USC has a great way of thinking about their attendees, and it is very, very inspiring. I think this also makes a great connection to our fourth point, which is attendee journey, attendee experience. And I very vividly remember this webinar with Aleksandra Brzozowska from Rigieraxe Springer Poland back in first half of 2022, when we talked about what a hybrid event was and if there even was a good hybrid. I remember this was a great webinar called the Yeti of events. So if there even was something like a good hybrid, because back then the term of hybrid event was completely new. We were still defining it and figuring out what it means to actually create a good hybrid. So let's see what Alexandra said about the sentimental journey and how they're built it at Ringelachse Springer.
What is quite interesting that comes to my mind is that we build some kind of sentimental journey. When I was describing those events, I realized that I'm talking about some small habits that were very vivid and very important for us as a company, where we were in a pre-corona times. So when we had all those physical gatherings and events and all those interactions with us, and it was very, like, as you Barbara said, it's really heartwarming when I was discussing this scrambled eggs. And then I realized that building this journey based on some sentimental habits that were moved from the real world to the online world, it just boosts the engagement, but like a real engagement, and like the emotions. And these are the touch points that are also quite important to build on. So yeah, so this is the thing that I'm most proud of.
So this is really interesting, and the way we think about marketing is all about the journey, right? You identify your goal, you design a journey where you take attendees either in person or virtual to go through that journey, find the content, find the people that they're looking for. It's going to help them and help your brand. This is all great. But what comes right after this is that you have to be able to measure those interactions, right? Otherwise, you just plan all this, you just design all this wonderful journey, but you do not have the data to know if you were successful in achieving your goals. We do believe that the secret of any successful event is that post-event you have, as a marketer, as a sales team leader, you have the data that you need to action on it, whatever that data is. And we have two great clips to talk about that. One from Mindy from BCD Meetings. We had a webinar together with Steve van der Haar from Winehouse Research that she just shared what she believes is the right things to measure. And then we had another clip that we're going to play back to back right after my short intro here, from Adam Rosen from USC, just sharing how they leverage data in there within our platform. So I'll pass it on to Mindy right now.
For your clients, for your event planning, how important are analytics in terms of proving out that ROI, or actually identifying some ways to get productive use out of these virtual event sessions?
They're critical. And that's true in the face-to-face world as well. I think the difference between the face-to-face world and the virtual or hybrid world is that the tools are already there. They're already tracking it. You already have all of this data. It's part of the platform. When you go to an in-person event, you can do it with, there's tons of ways to do it, using your app, using beacons, using scan, smart badges. There's so many ways you can get that data. But in the virtual world, it's all there. What you have to think through is how you're going to use that data, so that before you start tracking it, these are the reports I want and what it's going to tell me. If you're at a sales conference, you might want to monitor the chat to see where people are asking questions, because that's the information they may not understand, where you need to do follow-up information. You might care about how long they're spending in each space to see where areas of interest are. You might want to see who's connecting with whom to help facilitate those conversations later. There's so much data, but if you don't know what you're looking for, it's too much data. If you know what you want to find, you can set it up in advance to tell you the story of your event. And that information helps you plan your next event more effectively.
What I'd love to tag on about that, which is something that, I think is one of the most important pieces in the solution that you find, is also the reporting, to be able to look at that, right? And to know and to learn from it. We were fortunate that we, had used 6Connect starting in the fall. And so we knew what was there, and we had learned what our audience looked like and where they were going to be, and how much of that came from outside of, our Pacific time zone here in California. And so being able to kind of feel that afterwards and look at that is really key to taking the solution you have and getting better with every event you do.
And last but not least, everything we do at events leads back to sustainability. And here at Six Connects, we care deeply about it, and we invested in a report and partner with WSP to measure the impact of virtual events versus in-person events, right?
Absolutely, Barbara. And as you know, this is near and dear to my heart, right? I'm originally from Manaus, which is right in the middle of the Amazon forest. And I'm a true believer that everything that we do has an impact on this, the sustainability of, and the things that we can do to improve this are just incredible. We just need to be very conscious about that. Specifically on this industry, right? The event industry has such a huge footprint of carbon emissions that the ability that you have to bring certain components, certain virtual components, make such a significant impact in CO2 emissions, right? We have a lot of our large brands coming to us, large customers saying, how does this help me? We are engaged on this. That's why we made this investment. We have two clips now that I think will kind of walk you through a little bit more on these things. The first one is from very own Caitlin from the marketing team here at Six Connects that talks specifically about our report and sustainability. And the other clip is from Christina Gartner from HubSpot. In September, we had an event along with BizBash, and she had some great examples of how brands engage in social movements, including sustainability. So I'll let you guys watch this.
We gathered data on 7 different events, and we calculated the greenhouse gas savings from those 7 events by counting what would have happened if the event happened in person versus what actually happened because these events were hosted virtually. We also took number of attendees, event location, event days, things like that into consideration as well. And we tried to make it a very accurate and reliable, actually conservative report. So here we see in light green on the right, the emissions produced from hosting these 7 events virtually. And then in teal, the emissions that would have been produced if this event had taken place in person. And then in dark green on the left, you see the amount that was avoided since these 7 events were actually held virtually. So with just these 7 events, savings from just these 7 represent 26,370 metric tons of total emissions saved. The emissions avoided by hosting those events virtually is the equivalent of driving 66 million miles in an average passenger vehicles. And then on a grander scale, we see 9.2 million acres of forests. So you can see these numbers are very significant, and we even took it a step further. It equals 47.6 New York cities. It equals 37 Dallas, Texas. So it's quite a big area of space that we were able to save and sequester the carbon from by hosting those events virtually.
When you think about purpose and you think about social responsibility, I really think about the past couple years and how people have had to see their entire world completely shift and change. In some ways, accelerating technology, and other ways, seeing catastrophic news on a daily basis. And so corporate social responsibility and being able to have purpose and drive and being able to align corporations and companies with good impact, with making the world a better place, it's something that we're collectively looking for. We're essentially looking for good news. We want desperately to have good news on our scroll. We don't want to doom scroll anymore. It's been years of that. So when you're thinking about companies and you're thinking about that social responsibility, how are they making the world better? It's not just revenue, it's impact. What does that impact look like on a local, but also on a macro level? I think that we just saw the masterclass of that. If you look at what Patagonia just did, where you're seeing them taking these steps over time, where a couple years ago, Patagonia said, look, we're not going to do any more corporate swag for people because we want to actually make sure that our brand isn't being used by other corporations that don't follow the way that we see the world and the way that we should be responsible for what's happening. And so now you have the latest news of the owner gave it away to be able to provide lasting stakes to fight climate change. I think that is the ultimate test of walking the walk. And a lot of brands, I'm sure there were a couple war rooms after that announcement and press release was announced, where you have brands saying, how can we do this without having to do this? Like how do we get the same kind of love and press without doing the same things? And so hopefully you're going to start seeing more and more companies really taking this very clear view internally of, all right, well, here's what our branding looks like and here's what our marketing looks like, but what impact are we actually having? How are we actually making the world a better place? And so I think that's a really, really core thing to think about. I think it's also interesting in juxtaposition. If you look at some of the New York Fashion Week that we saw, there was definitely some polarizing events there where you had fast fashion versus haute couture. And so like I think it was Boohoo or one of the fast fashion things, they actually had Kourtney Kardashian as their environmental ambassador. How does a fast fashion brand have an environmental designer unless you plan on completely shifting what you are? So people are paying attention, and they're not only paying attention, but they're really supporting or not supporting with their wallet.
All right, guys. So I hope this has been helpful to you. We certainly invest a lot in putting content and educational content. We actually have our first ebook for 2023 in the process. It should be ready early in Gen 1. And it's about event trends. I hope you guys take opportunity and take a look at that. Unfortunately, it's not ready to share now, but it will be in a couple of weeks. I hope you enjoyed this content, and we'll hear for a lot more throughout 23.
Thank you, Luis, and thank you everybody for joining us. I am very happy that we got to do this recap because, well, simply just taking a look back at what happened, how our events changed. I think it's a great way to start the next year because all of the topics that we covered today are setting the tone for the new year and marking some of the trends that are going to be very influential in the future of our event activities. So again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Luis, for doing this with me. And coming back to what I announced at the very beginning, now that you all have the opportunity to check our Eventry by 6Connect solution and this lovely platform, please make your mark. Give us your review on how you liked it. You can scan this QR code and it will take you to a review page where you can share your feedback, how you interacted with the platform, how you liked it, and this will grant you a $25 Amazon gift card. So we'll be very, very grateful for all your feedback and input for this. And with that, thank you and have a great start into the next year. See you later.
Thank you so much. Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.